Hi, this is Jim from Trek World, and today we're going to take a look at what is probably the most significant auction since the 40th anniversary auction held by Christie's in New York.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Remember that in all of these videos, there's going to be a link in the description that you can go to where you will actually be taken to an affiliate link on Amazon showing you the availability of the books that I've been discussing. Now, back in 2023, we lost a gentleman by the name of Greg Jein. Now, Greg was a video effects specialist whose knowledge of practical models is mind-blowing, and his experience went all the way back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind when he designed the mothership. Having always been around Star Trek production, even if it began on the periphery of such things, he began to collect things, and I don't think any of us had any idea of exactly how much of a pack rat Greg was. The first indication of which was when family and friends began cataloging the items that he had in his immediate possession at the time of his death. These items would be auctioned off in October of 2023 by Heritage Auctioneers in Los Angeles. And Heritage has always been known for producing a catalog of the items that are going to be offered in any specific auction. And when they actually published the catalog for Greg's auction, this was a monster. Let's take a look at the thickness of this. This one book, and everything in this book was something that Greg Jein owned. Now, this book is amazing. There are 458 pages of items in here that Greg had that were sold. Amazingly, this auction cleared $13.7 million, I think, and it uncovered quite a few interesting things that we didn't know. For instance, the most amazing of which is an X-Wing fighter from Star Wars. It's sold for just north of $3 million. Now, while Greg did work with people who would later on become ILM, he was not involved with ILM at the point that this X-Wing fighter had been used. So this is just another example of him collecting things as he came across them. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a brief walk through and show you some of the more interesting things that showed up in this collection.
I wanted to call and say thank you so much for such a great job you do on Trek World channel. I've been watching since you started the channel, and as someone who has seen every episode of the original series and TNG probably 30 times each, I've learned so much from your channel about the backstory of Star Trek and how it was made and the drama between the creators and the actors. I felt like I knew a lot of this stuff, but watching your channel just made me realize I literally knew nothing about my favorite series of all time. So thank you so much. Love your channel, and I hope you continue to preserve all this great information for posterity online. Thank you.
Collection. And probably, I think it's kind of fitting that the very first item presented in this auction is about as far away from Star Trek as you can get. In particular, a 1943 miniature used for a Laurel and Hardy movie. Now, after that, we begin to look at a series of items, both science fiction and not, that take us through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And no true Pack Rats collection would not be complete without something from Zombies of the Stratosphere. Now, for those of you who may not know, Zombies of the Stratosphere was a multi-part serial that was shown in the movie houses during the weekends as part of the matinees, and the eagle-eyed viewers watching it can actually see Leonard Nimoy, which for 1952 is one of the earliest appearances that he had on screen. He also has a pilot uniform from This Island Earth, and no collection would be complete without a couple of things from Forbidden Planet. Now, as we approach the early to mid-60s, we start to see some of the absolutely, truly remarkable items that he had hidden away. The first of which is actually from Lost in Space. It is screen new. Now, we actually have to wait until page 58 before the first Star Trek items come up, and fittingly so, they're concerning Cage. Now, I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that I've noticed here is that Greg really loved publicity stills and behind-the-scene photograph. So a lot of the things that are in this are photographs or stills that were made behind the scenes, and in many cases, there haven't really been good reproductions of them before. This absolutely beautiful glossy content in this catalog is prime for scanning these, so you get your own copies of really high quality photos. Now, if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that I particularly tend to like when I get photographs that actually show not just the clapperboard from a scene, but they're far enough back that you can actually see the cameras that are being used to film the scene. And there's one such picture I had never seen before in this book, and it's right down there at the bottom, right there. It's a scene of McCoy and Chapel in sickbay. You can actually see what is obviously a close-up camera set up about 3.5, 4 feet away from them. Another thing that he did that I had not seen before is we are quite used to seeing candid photos of Shatner and his wife, Nimoy and his wife, Dee and his wife, but another family showed up in here that I had not actually seen any of before. And on the bottom row there, on the left-hand side, you can actually see Walter and his wife as well. And on page 119, we see, which we already knew he had, a beautiful laser pistol that was used in the cage. And this gentleman has more costumes than I've ever seen in one place before. And that's actually saying a lot, considering that William Ward Tice did his auction back in the 90s. Of course, he has screen-used props from the original series, like this beautiful communicator. Might as well do the rest of the landing party, right? Because he has a gorgeous tricorder. He also was the person who owned the Phaser 2, which originally, when he had it, was the only known hero phaser in existence. We now have seen that there is more than one, but the jury's still out on real screen used versus looks like real screen used, and they'll be on a topic for a different video. Now, another thing that's pretty popular among private collectors in Hollywood are face castings, and here's a perfect one that was done for the Salt Vampire in The Man Trap. Another thing that kind of turned up that was a surprise for some people is that he still had the 24-inch shooting model for the Galileo shuttlecraft. Now, this had actually been restored for use in the 1992 Star Trek exhibit, but then after they took that exhibit down, the jury was still out on whether they still had the model or not. In fact, I believe they did actually still have a reproduction up there, but Greg had the original. And not just a single tricorder, here he has another. And very much like the Galileo shuttlecraft, the Botany Bay was also shown at that Star Trek exhibit, but after that exhibit was done, it was returned back to Greg, who was its rightful owner. Communicator 2. Keep in mind, there are only 10 known communicators in the world. And we just verified that he had at least 2 of those 10. Now, most of us are familiar with Spock's brain, and it might not be your favorite episode, but it does have one interesting thing that he also owned, and that is the device that they used for controlling Spock was actually the repurposed communicator from the cage. In addition to the hero phaser, he also listed a stunt phaser that was available. These are one of the ones that were made very inexpensively, so that if they got dropped, sat on, crushed, didn't really matter. And he has items pretty much every Star Trek series, all the way up to Enterprise, before he moves into standard merchandise like the Mego dolls and such. Not to be left out, there are items in here from Planet of the Apes, as well as from 2001, A Space Odyssey. Then there's Logan's Run, Close Encounters. Now, in addition to Star Trek and Star Wars, he also even has materials from Buck Rogers, which shouldn't be a surprise because he did work on Buck Rogers. And let's just say that at 400 and some odd pages, you and I could be here all night just going page by page. This catalog is actually quite hard to get as regular catalogs go for auctions. They were issued at $25 a piece. I think I got mine for like 50 or 75, something like that. And I had to wait for one that was priced realistically. They're quite often going on eBay for well over $100 a piece right now. And I think that their value will skyrocket in the future as well, because of the amount, if nothing else, of documentation that this thing provides on a variety of different props that he owns.
So now let's get up with the fun stuff, like this right over here.